Your surrender is demanded immediately. Failure to comply will result in extermination. The alien voice was everywhere, blaring through loudspeakers, comms channels, even personal headsets of terrified soldiers crouched in ruined bunkers. Above them all, the alien flagship loomed, a black dagger slicing across the sky. But deep underground, buried in the steel belly of Outpost 47, one man sat alone in a shadowed room. He stirred a spoon slowly through a cracked ceramic mug, his face half lit by a dying console screen. Then, without looking up, he spoke aloud, as if answering a private joke. I don't take questions. It was a small sentence, but in that moment, it fractured the rhythm of panic. While terrified junior officers scrambled to patch through transmissions and dying medics pleaded for evacuation, this one lone figure leaned back and ignored the ultimatum, as if the entire war was background noise. He took a sip of lukewarm coffee, grimaced at the taste, and crushed the empty mug in one gloved hand, shards falling to the grated floor. The hook was not a roar of defiance or a grand speech, but that quiet, almost disrespectful dismissal. And with that, the Blackout operator stood up. On the surface, the chaos worsened. Alien troopships landed in waves, disgorging clawed raiders who stormed through defensive positions. Earth's last garrison on this side of the colony line was barely functional, its defenses gutted after a week of relentless bombardment. The outpost's acting commander, a fresh recruit promoted twice in 2 days only because those above him died, wiped sweat from his brow and tried to stall the alien demands with desperate negotiations. But below him, descending through maintenance shafts unseen, was the man they didn't even know they had. The Blackout operator had no rank, no insignia, and no official record beyond a black bar on Earth's war files. His designation was a warning more than a name. No living officer on the outpost had ever met him. His orders came from nowhere and everywhere. When things reached the absolute edge, when surrender became the last discussion on the table, he appeared. And when he did, there was no table left. The hook lingered in the airwaves as the alien captain, a towering creature armored in bone and steel, waited for a reply. When none came, he gave the signal to breach the main bunker. His elite raiders, 6 limbs, curved weapons, visors glowing red, stormed through the shattered doors. But inside they found only empty seats, flickering screens, and a cooling kettle. Then the lights died, one by one. It wasn't a power failure. Every circuit was deliberately shut down from a system that shouldn't have existed. Far below, the Blackout operator moved like a shadow, stepping easily through access tunnels that bypassed every alien sensor grid. He hummed tunelessly under his breath as he worked, setting shaped charges not to destroy walls but to collapse specific corridors, funneling the invaders exactly where he wanted them. He planted a modified beacon inside a broken crate, bait for their tracking teams, chuckling as he imagined the confusion it would cause. Already, on the alien bridge, technicians were reporting ghost signals everywhere, human signatures that appeared and vanished, life signs where there were none. In their panic, the alien captain ordered an immediate broadcast on all frequencies. Human defenders, your situation is hopeless. We offer you one final chance. Surrender, and we will show mercy. The operator tapped his wrist console, intercepting the signal, smiling as he rewrote its destination path. Instead of reaching the human defenders, the alien captain's proud ultimatum was routed back into the alien fleet's own internal channels. Aboard the other ships, crews stared in horror as their flagship broadcast what sounded like a desperate plea to surrender itself. The operator added subtitles in perfect alien script for emphasis, then cut the feed before they could correct it. Back on the surface, confusion spread. Alien strike teams found their communication links jamming up, their sensors blind, their squads vanishing one by one. Their war chants fell silent. Inside their command tent, one alien strategist howled that there must be a saboteur, while another swore it was human magic. The operator's next move was almost cruel in its simplicity. He crawled into an old ventilation shaft directly beneath the alien flagship's deployed ramp. From there, he removed a single power relay, no bigger than a deck of cards. That relay controlled the magnetic stabilizers keeping the ramp safely anchored to the ground. With a quiet snort of amusement, he dropped the relay down the shaft. Moments later, without warning, the entire ramp shuddered and crashed to the ground, taking 24 heavily armed raiders with it into a crater below. Their armored vehicles began failing next. The operator had seeded their staging area with tiny localized EMP charges, but these weren't blasts designed to cripple equipment. They were timed to trigger just as crews entered their machines, trapping them inside as locks seized and controls froze. One vehicle even flipped onto its side as the operator remotely triggered its stabilization gyros in the wrong sequence. At every turn, the operator's presence was felt but never seen. To the aliens, it was as if the outpost itself had turned against them. Lights flickered at the worst possible moments. Doors sealed themselves shut with squads inside. Ammunition crates locked and then began venting freezing gas. Even the very ground under their boots betrayed them, as hidden demolition charges undermined their staging platforms. All the while, the Blackout operator watched from shadows, amused by their flailing. He moved from hiding spot to hiding spot, whispering sarcastic commentary under his breath at their increasingly desperate reactions. As night fell, the alien captain once again stood on the cracked tarmac outside the human outpost, bellowing his demand for surrender. Behind him, his troops formed a shaky perimeter, weapons trembling, eyes darting. The only reply he received was the faint whir of a drone camera hovering above his head. The feed went live, broadcasting his angry, trembling face to every alien ship in orbit. Then a single human voice came over the loudspeaker, smooth and cold. "I don't take questions." In that moment, the alien fleet's collective heart froze. Below their feet, deep inside their own systems, the operator's plan was reaching its crescendo. The fleet's primary reactor nodes were already compromised. Backup systems were cycling false diagnostics. Their whole command infrastructure was now in his hands. And above them all, a single human, just one, stood against the entire invading force, daring them to try again. And he hadn't even fired a shot yet. The alien flagship's corridors were eerily quiet, filled only with the faint hum of failing systems and the occasional frustrated hiss from alien engineers frantically tapping at malfunctioning control panels. Lights flickered wildly, sometimes plunging entire sections into total darkness before weakly sputtering back to life. Somewhere deep inside that massive ship, the Blackout operator moved without hurry, stepping from shadow to shadow as if this vessel belonged to him, not the invaders who had taken the colony by force. His presence wasn't detectable by sensors, which he had long since corrupted. The aliens could only guess where he was, relying on terrified reports from scattered patrols that never came back. He paused at a junction, listening to the chatter on the alien channels. Orders barked, full of panic. Whole squads were arguing about whether to retreat from the decks closest to human space, unsure if their commander even still held authority. The operator smiled slightly under his helmet. Psychological collapse was already beginning, right on schedule. Below, one particularly loud alien lieutenant was swearing in his native tongue, demanding that his troops double-check every hatch and bulkhead. He marched proudly into a cargo bay, his personal honor guard around him, shouting about human weakness and the futility of resistance. As he strode forward, a small device clattered to the floor behind them, spinning noisily. All 6 aliens turned sharply, weapons raised. But the device just sat there, blinking quietly. One soldier stepped forward and picked it up, examining it with an expression of disgust. He sneered and tossed it aside, barking a crude joke about human toys. The device beeped softly in response and triggered an override that locked every door in the bay. Before the squad could react, the operator's voice echoed softly through the chamber, dripping with casual amusement. "Not a toy. A distraction?" A nearby bulkhead groaned and then burst inward as a hidden panel blew open, releasing a cloud of choking gas that disoriented the entire squad. They barely had time to fire in random directions before the lights went out completely and silence fell again. On the bridge, the alien captain smashed a clawed fist onto the command console, denting it. His best soldiers were vanishing like children in a dark forest. His scanners showed no human life signs, and yet his teams were reporting encounters with something moving through the decks like a ghost. He ordered security reinforcements to the lower decks, but every route they took was sabotaged. Sealed hatches, deactivated lifts, even false guidance signals led them in circles. The operator wasn't just fighting them, he was making them question the very reliability of their own flagship. Elsewhere, two alien engineers worked feverishly at a wall panel, trying to restore power to auxiliary sensors. They whispered to each other, casting nervous glances down the corridor. As one finally succeeded and the systems flickered back online, a figure appeared briefly in the corner of the camera feed, a shadow standing impossibly still before slipping out of sight. Both engineers froze, staring at the screen, breath catching in their throats. Then the power cut out again, plunging them into darkness. One of them bolted in terror, leaving his partner behind. The remaining engineer turned slowly, his heart pounding, and found himself face to face with the dark visor reflecting his terrified expression back at him. The operator tilted his head slightly, almost as if considering mercy. But there was none. A quick movement, silent and efficient, and the engineer slumped to the floor. Back in the ship's central corridor, a squad of alien warriors moved cautiously forward, scanning every corner with weapons raised, nerves frayed. They found the wreckage of a previous patrol, weapons scattered, armor dented, no sign of a fight but all of them missing. The squad leader barked an order to retreat, but as they turned back, a hidden panel slid open beside them and a flash grenade detonated, blinding them instantly. The operator emerged from that same panel, moving with lethal precision. By the time their sight returned, he was gone, and their weapons had been disabled remotely. Their fate was sealed as doors sealed tight behind them, trapping them inside an airlock that began venting atmosphere moments later. The alien captain finally snapped, demanding a full retreat to secure zones, ordering all patrols to regroup and defend the bridge itself. But it was already too late. As he gave those orders, the bridge lights dimmed and the great viewing window began to frost over, evidence of a gradual pressure drop they had not even noticed. From the far side of the chamber, the doors hissed open and the operator simply stepped inside, calm, silent, utterly unimpressed by the weapons trained on him. None of the aliens fired immediately. Fear froze them in place. The operator lifted a single hand and pointed directly at the captain, as if marking him for later. Then, without a word, he withdrew into the darkness again, letting them feel the weight of their own terror. As soon as he vanished, all the bridge consoles began displaying a single phrase, translated perfectly into their alien language: surrender not accepted. The phrase repeated on every screen across the entire fleet, forcing them to see it in every control room, every barracks, every mess hall. Panic spread like fire. Meanwhile, outside the ship, human technicians on the battered surface of the outpost watched as the flagship's main weapons arrays powered down without explanation. One technician laughed out loud, realizing exactly who must be responsible. "The Blackout operator," he muttered. "He's already inside." Inside the flagship, the operator continued his work. He moved through maintenance ducts and reactor shafts with effortless speed, disabling power conduits, redirecting coolant lines, planting shaped charges in key structural nodes. His movements were surgical and methodical, but also playful. He left personal touches behind for the aliens to discover. In one mess hall, he left a tray neatly arranged with alien ration packs, each opened and emptied as if he had paused there for a casual meal. On a wall, he scrawled a phrase in the alien script that loosely translated as, "Nice try, amateurs." By the time the alien captain realized the extent of the sabotage, his ship was crippled, his troops demoralized, and his bridge crew on the verge of mutiny. He tried to send a transmission to the other ships in orbit, calling for reinforcements, but the operator had rerouted all outgoing signals to broadcast nothing but static interspersed with laughter. The message was clear: the flagship was no longer theirs. The operator owned it now. As the chapter drew to a close, the alien fleet watched in horror as one of their own ships, fully operational just hours before, slowly rotated and began drifting uncontrollably toward the colony's atmosphere, fires blossoming from its main engines. And somewhere inside the shadows of that dying vessel, the Blackout operator whispered to himself, amused, "I'm just getting started." The alien flagship trembled with an unsettling rhythm, systems flickering like a beast choking on its own breath. The operator moved calmly through the dim corridors, boots silent against the deck, shadows wrapping around him as if the ship itself conspired to hide his presence. His infiltration had gone far beyond sabotage now. Every system he touched became unreliable, every space he passed through turned haunted. The crew no longer moved as an army but as frightened individuals, scattered, desperate, whispering superstitious warnings to each other, as though the operator was a phantom rather than flesh and blood. But the operator was real and his work was far from over. He had one last mission on this doomed vessel, one final twist to deliver before this chapter closed. Far above, in the ship's command chamber, the surviving senior officers held a tense meeting, arguing bitterly over how to salvage the situation. Some demanded retreat, others called for a suicidal assault on the human colony below, but all of them knew that their authority was meaningless as long as the operator moved freely within their walls. As they argued, the central screen blinked unexpectedly, the room falling silent as every console around them flickered to life. The operator appeared on the main display, seated casually in what appeared to be the alien captain's personal chair, helmet gleaming in the dim light, one boot propped lazily on a console as if the flagship already belonged to him. His voice, cool and sharp, cut through the silence. "You look busy," he said, almost conversationally. "So I'll make this quick." Before any officer could react, all their personal consoles began flashing error codes. Their security systems refused to respond, their emergency overrides locked out. The operator watched their panic unfold from the captain's quarters, an amused tilt to his head. The camera feed panned slowly to reveal what none of them had expected. In the center of the room behind him stood a small projector. It hummed to life, displaying intercepted transmissions from Earth itself. These were not orders of support or rallying cries. These were betrayals, secret communications from high-ranking human officials offering the alien fleet a deal in exchange for peace, the surrender of the operator himself. The alien officers stared in shock as line after line of damning text scrolled across the screen. Earth's governments had tried to sell out their own Blackout operator, offering him as a bargaining chip to appease the invaders. The operator's voice returned, quieter now, almost contemplative. "They thought you could kill me," he said. "They thought this would be a clean arrangement. A little treason for a little peace." In that moment, the alien officers realized something chilling. The operator was not just dismantling their fleet. He was dismantling the entire foundation of trust they had built for this invasion. By exposing Earth's duplicity, he made certain that the aliens could no longer trust any deal, any truce, any promise from human diplomats. There would be no surrender. No negotiation. Only the chaos he had engineered. On board the ship, alien troops who saw the intercepted transmissions began to falter. Rumors spread like wildfire that the invasion itself had been manipulated, that even Earth's leaders were using them as pawns in a deeper game. Morale collapsed completely as distrust bloomed between squads. Command structures dissolved as alien officers accused each other of being part of the deception. Meanwhile, the operator moved unseen through the confusion, sabotaging life support systems in non-lethal but terrifying ways. Air scrubbers stuttered, lights pulsed with a nauseating flicker, walls vibrated as if alive. Even gravity itself became unreliable, shifting unpredictably, adding to the psychological torment of every soldier trapped aboard. Amid this chaos, the operator triggered his next move. He hacked into the alien flagship's internal intercom, broadcasting a short but devastating message to every deck, every chamber, every sleeping quarter. "I was never coming to surrender," his voice echoed. "But you all did." With those simple words, he detonated charges placed earlier in the day, collapsing key maintenance corridors that connected the alien flagship to its fleet's primary supply ship. Without warning, that lifeline was severed, leaving the flagship isolated, cut off from reinforcements, support, or escape. The aliens aboard could only watch in stunned horror as their logistics vessel drifted away, powerless to reconnect. The operator's manipulation didn't stop there. His final act was perhaps the most humiliating of all. He used their own communication systems to broadcast footage of the alien officers panicking on their bridge to the entire fleet. Across every ship, alien crews saw their mighty leaders reduced to terrified creatures barking contradictory orders, begging for answers that would never come. The operator's quiet chuckle threaded through the transmission, mocking them without a word of violence. Back on the bridge, the alien captain, who had managed to escape his earlier trap but with a badly damaged suit and a limp, finally arrived to witness the wreckage of his command. He stared at the screen where the operator's helmeted figure remained seated, unmoved, calm, even as the flagship collapsed around them. Fury filled the captain, but so did despair. His fleet had already begun retreating from orbit, abandoning their flagship without waiting for orders. In his last desperate act, the alien captain ordered a full self-destruct of the flagship, hoping to at least deny the operator this final prize. But when he slammed his claw onto the destruct console, the console simply played back a recording of the operator's voice, delivered with infuriating calm. "Override accepted. Self-destruct disabled. This is my ship now." The alien captain fell to his knees, the weight of total defeat finally crashing down upon him. The operator didn't need to kill him. The humiliation was complete. In the observation deck high above, the operator stood with his back to the stars, watching as the alien fleet scattered in disarray. Their war was over before it had even begun. He had turned their invasion into a lesson, not just for them but for Earth itself. Those human leaders who had tried to trade him away would soon discover that the operator did not work for them, and did not forgive betrayal. As the chapter ended, the operator activated a private comm channel directly to Earth's High Command, leaving them with one final transmission, his voice cold and utterly certain. "Blackout operator doesn't take orders either." In the silence that followed the retreat of the alien fleet, the sky above the battered colony outpost felt impossibly vast. The fires on the surface still burned in scattered places, but the threat had passed, swept away not by armies or fleets, but by the deliberate, methodical work of a single man who now stood in the cold shadows of the alien flagship's observation deck. The operator leaned against the massive viewport, his helmet reflecting the dim light of ruined systems and fractured consoles. Below him, the remnants of alien landing craft lay abandoned where they had fled in panic, scattered across a battlefield that no longer mattered. For the first time in hours, perhaps days, there was no shouting, no blaring alarms, no desperate scrambling for control. Just quiet. The operator breathed slowly, his work complete but his mind already elsewhere. The fleet was broken, but Earth's betrayal weighed heavier than any alien force he had dismantled. He moved through the ship with the same slow, deliberate pace he had maintained all along, passing by scattered alien soldiers who now cowered in corners or lay stunned by the psychological war he had waged on them. They did not lift their weapons. Most could not even look at him. He did not acknowledge them either. They were no longer combatants in his mind, simply remnants of a failed assault who would carry stories of this defeat back to whatever empire they served. The operator stepped into the alien captain's quarters, glancing once more at the ceremonial blade he had driven into the floor. It remained there, unmoved, a symbol of shattered pride and wasted ambition. Without hesitation, he crossed the room to a private console he had discovered earlier, and keyed in a sequence that began a full data purge of the flagship's logs. All records of their battle plans, invasion strategies, even their internal communications with Earth's traitorous leaders were now in his possession, and would be erased from theirs forever. The operator did not act for Earth's government, or any chain of command. He acted for himself now, and this information would be his weapon when the time came. Outside the ship, the colony's battered survivors began cautiously emerging from bunkers and shelters. They looked skyward, confused at first, then relieved as they saw alien ships breaking orbit, their formations ragged, their discipline shattered. None of them knew what had really happened aboard the flagship. Rumors would spread soon enough. Some would claim it was sabotage. Others would whisper about Earth's secret weapon. But those closest to the truth would speak of a single figure who had moved unseen through the heart of the enemy's power, dismantling their fleet from within without firing a shot that anyone could hear. They would speak the name with awe and fear. Blackout operator. On the flagship bridge, systems flickered back to life one by one, but not under alien control. The operator stood alone at the helm, helmeted head bowed as he configured the ship's navigation. Slowly, the great vessel rotated, breaking from its orbit of the colony, and setting a course directly toward the outer edge of the alien fleet. Panic spread among the remaining alien ships as they watched their own flagship, now clearly under human control, move deliberately toward them. Orders were shouted across comms channels to intercept, to disable the flagship before it could close the distance. But every attempt failed. Their weapons did not lock. Their targeting systems scrambled. Their leaders hesitated. They did not know if this was another trap or a declaration of war. The operator exploited their indecision perfectly. The flagship continued its slow, implacable approach, but it never opened fire. It simply passed through their formations, close enough that alien crews could see the dark silhouette of the operator himself standing at the main viewport, hands clasped behind his back, posture completely relaxed as if daring them to act. None did. Even the bravest among them could not muster the will to challenge the ghost who had dismantled them from the inside. When the flagship finally cleared their lines, it accelerated sharply, burning hard for deep space, leaving behind a fleet too humiliated and fractured to pursue. Inside the flagship, the operator moved once more, this time toward the escape pod bay. He had no intention of keeping this ship. Its symbolism mattered far more than its actual capabilities. With a few precise commands, he locked the flagship's navigation onto a distant trajectory that would carry it into the heart of a dead star system centuries from now, erasing all trace of it from the galaxy. As he climbed into a small, unassuming escape pod, he allowed himself one final look at the wreckage of the alien war machine around him. His mission had never been about destruction alone. It had been about message, control, psychological domination. He had shown the invaders what it meant to underestimate humanity. And he had shown Earth itself what it meant to think they could control him. The escape pod detached with a soft shudder, slipping silently into space, masked by stealth protocols the operator had activated long before the aliens ever arrived. No tracking beacon, no transponder, no signal at all. To any observer, it was as though he had vanished completely. The flagship continued on its lonely journey into oblivion, a ghost ship carrying 1,000 unanswered questions. As the pod coasted in the darkness, the operator removed his helmet for the first time since the entire campaign had begun. His face was unremarkable, weathered but calm, unreadable but deeply human. He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the silence, the cold freedom of space wrapping around the small capsule. His next destination was not set. His orders were his own now. Earth's betrayal had severed any final ties that might have existed. But the lesson had been delivered, and in time, Earth's leaders would realize what they had unleashed by trying to trade him away. From the colony below, survivors watched the flagship disappear into the stars and knew instinctively that this was not the end. The operator had not stayed to take credit or bask in their gratitude. His silence spoke louder than any speech could have. He had simply ended the threat and moved on, leaving behind a legend that would ripple through both human and alien worlds alike. In the escape pod, drifting far from any watchful eye, the operator finally spoke again, this time to himself. The words were soft but sharp, a simple statement that carried all the weight of the war he had just ended. No questions. No chains. And with that, the operator closed his eyes again, drifting deeper into the void, perfectly content to let the galaxy wonder what he might do next. He would remain out there somewhere, unseen, unbound, and waiting. Not for orders. Never for orders. Only for the next moment when someone, somewhere, might foolishly believe they could demand his surrender. In the quiet void of space, the escape pod drifted far from the shattered orbit of the colony and the disintegrating remnants of the alien fleet. The stars around the Blackout operator were distant and indifferent, yet they seemed to shine a little colder in the aftermath of what he had done. Inside the pod, the controls glowed softly in the dim light, quietly confirming what he already knew: he was completely alone now. There would be no pursuit. The alien fleet was broken, and Earth would not dare to send anyone after him. Not after their betrayal had been exposed, not after the terrifying clarity of what he could do had been demonstrated so completely. He sat in silence, helmet resting beside him, eyes watching the slow crawl of space through the small viewport. His face remained calm, his breathing steady, but deep beneath that stillness was a cold calculation. His work was far from finished. The galaxy was a vast and predatory place, and the lesson he had taught the alien invaders would ripple far beyond this single failed invasion. Word would spread through channels both official and hidden. Whispers of the Blackout operator would seed themselves in every alien war council, in every pirate den, in every opportunistic faction watching humanity from the shadows. Those who had mocked Earth's ability to resist would now hesitate. Fear was more effective than any fleet. But the operator did not drift aimlessly. Even as he sat in the silence, he was assembling his next steps. The exposed transmissions from Earth's High Command, their willingness to sell him out as a sacrificial bargaining chip, had revealed more than treachery. They had revealed weakness, cracks in the leadership that others would seek to exploit. His mission had never been about patriotism or loyalty. It had always been about control. And now, he saw clearly that Earth itself might one day need a lesson of its own. The pod's systems flashed a proximity alert, a quiet tone that did not surprise him. Far ahead, hidden in the shadow of a small moon, a ship waited. Not alien but human. One of his own caches, stashed long ago during black operations no one had ever recorded. A vessel perfectly equipped for a man with no chain of command and no allegiances. He had prepared for this possibility, knowing that someday even those who called themselves his allies might become enemies. The pod adjusted course automatically, engines firing in short, efficient bursts as it guided itself toward the waiting ship. As he approached, the operator allowed himself a quiet smile, the closest thing to emotion he had shown since this entire encounter began. Back on the colony below, human engineers and soldiers worked in stunned silence to clear the wreckage left behind. They spoke in hushed tones about what had happened, most of them unsure whether the stories were true, whether one man could have really dismantled an entire fleet from within. But there were those who had seen glimpses, officers who had monitored alien transmissions, techs who had caught sight of him moving through the chaos. For them, there was no doubt. The Blackout operator was real, and his legend was only growing. On the surface, a battered officer who had served in the colony's defense command stared up at the sky, wondering why the operator had never returned to accept thanks, to take command, or even to speak a single word to them. But deep down, he understood. The operator had never fought for medals or recognition. He had not fought for Earth's leaders or their fragile politics. He had fought because he chose to. And now, he was gone again, vanishing back into the dark places where no one could follow. In orbit, the alien fleet had fully withdrawn, retreating into the depths of space with fractured discipline. Their officers would face consequences in their own empire, punishment for failure. But more than punishment, they would face the fear that would now haunt their culture forever. Their mightiest war fleet had been undone by a single human whose name they would never know, whose face they would never see, whose motivations they could not understand. That fear would linger. Every future invasion plan would carry the ghost of the Blackout operator, a reminder that humans did not always fight fair and that Earth's most dangerous asset could not be negotiated with, bribed, or controlled. Back inside his new ship, the operator stepped onto the bridge, systems coming to life at his touch. The vessel responded instantly, welcoming him like an old companion. Here, there was no hierarchy, no command protocols. Only autonomy. Only freedom. He sat at the helm and reviewed the data he had recovered from the alien flagship and from Earth's transmissions. Names, coordinates, secret dealings, all of it laid bare before him. A map of betrayal, ambition, and opportunity. He did not smile, but his focus sharpened. His next moves would not be dictated by anyone else. In the quiet dark, he adjusted course one more time, setting the ship on a trajectory far from any known human or alien territory. He had no intention of returning to Earth anytime soon. They had shown him their true face. In time, they would call for him again, desperate for his skills when their fragile power slipped through their fingers. But when that time came, They would not find an obedient asset waiting to take orders. They would find a man who remembered their betrayal. A man who answered to no one. As the engines powered up and the stars stretched into lines, the operator leaned back in his chair, hands steady on the controls. He spoke only once, a quiet whisper meant for no one but himself, a final line that encapsulated the entire campaign and its aftermath. No chains. No masters. No mercy. With that, the ship disappeared into the void, leaving behind a scarred colony, a broken fleet, and a galaxy that would never forget the Shadow who had taught them all a simple, brutal truth. The Blackout operator didn't take questions. He didn't take orders. And most of all, he didn't take prisoners. His legend was now part of the fabric of fear itself, a dark thread running through every corner of space. And somewhere out there, unseen and unpredictable, he waited for the next time someone would make the mistake of underestimating humanity. The alien fleet hovered in uneasy formation above the battered colony outpost, their confidence draining by the minute as they watched their proud flagship drift helplessly, systems failing in cascading waves. On the surface below, human survivors huddled together, cautiously watching the skies. They didn't understand exactly what was happening, but they knew enough to recognize that the tables had turned. A single man was doing all this. A ghost without a name, a shadow without rank. The Blackout operator had turned the alien raiders into prey, and they were only just beginning to realize it. Inside the flagship, the alien captain paced back and forth in the command chamber, his claws scraping deep grooves into the deck plating. His underlings dared not speak as they observed the chaos around them. Every system that once gave them supremacy had become unreliable or worse, sabotaged. The alien captain suddenly barked an order to his remaining warriors to hunt the intruder down personally. He swore that if the humans wanted to play games, then he would lead the hunt himself. With a snarl, he donned heavier armor and stormed out, accompanied by his elite guards. The corridors trembled as they marched, weapons ready, sensors primed. But the Blackout operator had been waiting for this moment. Far down one of the dim corridors, a door slid open, apparently malfunctioning. The alien captain took the bait, pushing his guards forward into a maze of service tunnels. As they advanced, the lights began to flicker in patterns that played with their senses. Sometimes they thought they saw shadows darting just out of reach. Sometimes they heard footsteps echoing behind them that never resolved into anything real. The operator didn't need to attack them directly. Fear was his most efficient weapon now. One of the alien guards muttered something about retreating back to the main corridor, but before he could finish his sentence, the floor beneath him gave way as a concealed demolition charge detonated. He dropped instantly into a maintenance pit far below, disappearing from view. The other guards froze, staring at the hole as the dust cleared, afraid to move in any direction. Then a small device, no larger than a human hand, rolled out of a vent beside them and stopped at their feet. They recognized it too late, a local gravity scrambler. The device activated and suddenly the entire passage twisted, the very air rippling as gravity itself was temporarily inverted. The aliens were slammed upward into the ceiling, tumbling in confusion, before crashing back down just as suddenly. By the time they recovered, the operator had moved on. The alien captain, though shaken, pressed forward with grim determination. He snarled at his troops to keep moving, forcing them deeper into the twisting service routes where even their own schematics couldn't guide them. The operator had locked doors and rerouted entire sections, transforming familiar corridors into a labyrinth. Along the way, the aliens passed bizarre sights designed to unsettle them even further, stacks of their own weapons arranged carefully in piles as if discarded by fleeing comrades, rooms where all the lights were perfectly synchronized to pulse with the rhythm of a heartbeat, and doors that hissed open just long enough to reveal empty, darkened chambers before snapping shut again. The operator's traps grew more audacious the deeper they went. At one point, a pressure door suddenly closed behind them and atmospheric vents opened above, releasing a harmless but pungent gas that mimicked a corrosive agent. The aliens scrambled for protective gear, wasting precious time, before realizing it was nothing more than a distraction. Their sensors reported no danger, but their nerves were shredded. Every noise, every flicker of light, Every shift in temperature made them jump. Their weapons jittered in their claws, their confidence shattered. Meanwhile, back on the bridge, a junior alien officer reviewed the latest surveillance feeds and came to a terrifying conclusion. The operator wasn't just disabling systems randomly. He was driving their captain exactly where he wanted him. The entire hunt was an elaborate ruse, one that used the captain's arrogance as the guiding thread. But by the time this realization reached the captain's ears, it was far too late. The alien captain and his diminished guards finally emerged into what appeared to be an auxiliary control room, a large chamber with dozens of consoles. They paused to catch their breath, reassured by the familiar layout. The captain ordered one of his soldiers to establish a communication link to the fleet. But as soon as the soldier touched a console, a hidden program activated. The entire room locked down instantly and a cold voice filled the air, amplified through every speaker in perfect clarity. It was the operator. "You chased me this far. Let me show you what you missed." Every screen in the chamber flickered and then lit up with footage from inside the ship: alien patrols ambushed and captured, systems dismantled, reactors sabotaged. Each screen showed a different angle, a different humiliation. Then came the worst of all, a live feed from the captain's personal quarters, where the operator had left a calling card, the captain's ceremonial blade driven into the floor, pinning the captain's own war banner beneath it. The alien captain roared in fury, slamming his fists into a console, but this time his rage couldn't change anything. The operator continued speaking, his tone cool and almost amused. "You asked for surrender," he said. "You forgot to ask whose." At that moment, the operator triggered a sequence he had prepared from the start. All around the auxiliary control room, small charges hidden behind panels detonated in sequence, slicing key support struts and collapsing sections of the ceiling, carefully controlling the destruction to trap the captain and his remaining guards inside. They were pinned, unable to advance or retreat, cut off from reinforcements. The operator's silhouette appeared briefly on one of the flickering screens, helmeted, unreadable, but unmistakably triumphant. Then the screens went dark. The alien captain's breath rasped heavily inside his helmet as he realized he wasn't hunting the operator. He never had been. The operator had led him through a maze of his own design, dismantled his forces, shattered his fleet's morale, and now left him isolated and powerless inside his own flagship. In the corridors outside, the operator moved on, already preparing his next move. He had no need to finish off the captain directly. The captain's failure would serve as a message more powerful than any final shot. The flagship was broken, its crew demoralized, its systems compromised beyond repair. The operator was in total control now, and he knew the alien fleet was watching every moment, terrified of what might come next. As the chapter closed, the operator paused briefly in an observation deck overlooking the stars. He leaned against the railing, listening to the garbled alien transmissions flooding the airwaves, pleas for help, arguments, panic. He spoke quietly to himself, almost as if savoring the situation. "They came for surrender," he murmured, smiling under his helmet. "They'll leave with a lesson."